Welcome. We're going to talk about diversity today, diversity in the IT industry. What did you notice today when you looked around at the conference? Anyone? Tell me? Not many women. What else? Anyone? Not many people of different ethnicities. Not many people with different physical abilities. Not much diversity at all. Now, diversity is not just a problem in the IT industry. It's a wider problem. But we can't change the whole world in one go. We can change our own world. So we're going to try and talk about diversity, show you a bit what diversity is, why the IT industry really needs it, and what each of us can do every day to help contribute to changing this. So bear with us. One of the first conferences I was at was PHP UK. And I remember feeling completely and utterly out of place, feeling like an alien. And if it hadn't been for the PHP women community, who I knew a few people from online contact, I would never have come back. I felt intimidated, I felt alien, I felt out of place. And a lot of people in the IT industry do so. And that is one of the reasons why we're losing people. And I think we can change that.
So, who likes to have fun with other people? Well, and who has ever felt alone? So, the thing is, I grew up in a small village, and growing up in a small village is quite fun, because everybody knows each other. But when you feel out of place, or feel that you shouldn't belong there, it's quite shitty actually. So, who remembers this one? This is my first computer. It was awesome. And you know why? Because it didn't judge me. If it makes a mistake, it's because I did something wrong. Not because it feels threatened by me, doesn't like me, thinks I'm a smart ass. And I think we can learn a little bit from computers. So the thing is, it's now 2016, and after I've been bullied all my life in that small village, I found my way out, and I work now for an awesome communication agency. And I think it's time for everybody to feel more comfortable in the groups that they are around. So make sure everybody's welcome. And I mean, we can put people on the moon, and we can make self-driving cars. But somehow, it's still complicated to make everybody feel comfortable. And somehow, my brain can't grasp that. So, we're going to talk about that today.
Right, so what is diversity? Diversity is about respect. It's about realizing that every individual is unique and that all those differences make us better and that we can learn from each other with all those differences. One moment for a technical break. Yeah? Okay. So let's have a look at some aspects which encompass diversity. First of all, gender.
Well, I'm male.
And as you might see, I'm female.
And I'm 30 years old. Yeah, sure. I'm 30 years old.
And I've celebrated my 27th birthday for the 16th time.
What happened?
Yep, that one.
Well, I'm white.
So am I.
I'm Caucasian.
And I'm of Jewish descent.
I'm agnostic.
And I'm a spiritual humanist.
I'm slim built, and back then they used to call me the living corpse.
And I'm so glad he's still around. And as you might see, I'm a bit more curvy.
I suffer from depression.
I can be overstimulated.
I'm a heterosexual.
I love people. Let's just leave it at that.
I grew up in a small village, as I told you, and right now I live in a town.
And I grew up in a village as well, in a one-parent family, and I now live in the big city.
And this is the first talk that I've been giving at several conferences.
And some of you might know, I'm a bit more experienced at speaking at conferences.
And I'm currently employed at a communication agency.
And I'm self-employed. We are developers. We like diversity. And we think that with diversity we'll all be better. Diversity is not about being equal. It's about treating each other as equals. It's about treating each other as fellow developers. It's about treating each other as someone you want to work with. It's not about being the same. It's about celebrating the differences. Make sense to everyone? Okay, let's have a look at why we should do that. You want me to put the slide back up? Okay. Why we should have a look at this and why we should all be invested in this. First of all, quality. You are all developers? You all program in some way or another? Yeah? What's programming? Programming, in fact, is nothing more but thinking in scenarios. Thinking in scenarios, what do we expect our user to want to do with our application? But also, what would a malicious person want to do with our application? So how do we defend against the malicious people? And how do we enable the users we want to have? Think about when Twitter first started. We all know that all sorts of add-ons were being built which Twitter had never thought of and wasn't really ready for all those add-ons to Twitter. They then took them over and killed them, but you can also think of your application as something to be built out by other people. One of the things you find when you have a more diverse company is that you get more diverse scenarios. And the interesting thing in this is that research has shown that those more diverse scenarios don't always even come from the people with diversity backgrounds, but just the fact that the team is more diverse means that everyone in the team starts thinking in more diversity in the scenarios they bring in, and your application will be better from the start. Make sense? Some examples.
Well, the thing is, software is not currently only in the IT industry. Software is currently in every aspect of our lives. I mean, agriculture has never had software, and now they do. And also for manufacturing. Manufacturing has software, and it's software all over the place now. So we need to think about our users. And Apple did that together with the ASCII Foundation, Apple implemented this first. Having emojis in different skin tones, well, I think that's a small start. And it's all these small things that add up and makes our users feel more comfortable, feel more welcome. So we should think about that and think about our target audience. And I'm a vegetarian, so when I book a restaurant, I always get a little bit wary with these kind of forms that say, can you please make an excuse that says, hey, I don't want any meat or any fish or any whatever. And when I have these options, which is as a developer, as easy to make as that one, I feel more welcome. And the same goes, and you have to target this on your target audience, but this for gender is not sufficient most of the times anymore. So this is a better option, and Facebook extrapolated that a little bit by giving 71 options currently. I don't say that you have to implement 71 options, but think about your target audience and think about what you should implement for them. It's about making your users feel welcome and about getting them to use your product. And when you look at it, maybe you should think a little bit further. If you think outside the box, it was never addressed. It was a superhero cape.
Right. And then economy. If we look at the IT industry now, lots of vacancies, very little skilled workforce to fill those vacancies. The IT industry is the industry at this moment with the highest number of vacancies. And it's still growing. The projected growth for the next few years is between 20 to 40%, depending on which country you look at. And that's including outsourcing, which means that outsourcing to low-wage countries, those countries will have those growth figures as well. That's still excluding disruptive growth. You all know what disruptive growth is? It's basically what we've seen the last 10 to 20 years in the IT industry. We've seen the coming of internet, we've seen the rise of ERP, we've seen the rise of mobile applications. It's all been disruptive growth. Suddenly something big happens and we all have to adjust all our applications to work with it. With the historic perspective of what's happened in the last 20 years, we can basically expect disruptive growth again. If that happens, the industry is not going to grow with 20 to 40%, it's going to grow with 250%. We're already with a shortage of workforce. How can we sustain this if we don't open up the industry to a more diverse workforce, if we don't make people feel welcome? The thing is, of course, we need more people to start studying. We need to change the in-stream from very young people. At the same time, we want to prevent people leaving. If the IT industry doesn't step up, we will impact the world economy. At the end of the day, most industries nowadays depend so heavily on IT that if we can't make the projected growth, the rest of the world economy will be impacted. And it won't fall over, but it will be impacted. Do we want that? Do we want to be successful? Do we want to grow? Do we want to be rich? Talking about successful, it's also been shown by every single research into diversity that companies with more diversity in every single level, including C-level, will be more successful. They'll be more successful in higher profits. They'll be more successful with larger customer base. It's easier for them to capture a new market share. Every single research has shown that they'll have more equity reserves. Every financial figure, every financial measurement shows they're more successful. Easy equation to me. We need more diversity because we'll perform better.
So I always like to think, what if we can experiment with it? I mean, I'm a great fan of laboratories, I'm a great fan of testing, I'm a great fan of everything, setting up in a small scale, see what it does. So I started looking for diversity examples that we're testing out, and Spotify said, oh, we're working towards a more diverse community and we're going slow on that, and we don't like slow. Spotify said, oh, we like fast, we want it fast. So they organized a hackathon, and instead of targeting it just on a GitHub user base and doing all the things that they used to do, they started putting out Facebook ads and tutorials for using GitHub. And they managed to get, for that hackathon, a 50-50% ratio. Not only on gender, but also on ethnicity. And it was just by targeting the audience different, by setting up a different dinner for the attendees. And yeah, just no more beer and pizza culture. That's not welcome for everybody. And they also took away the
competitive.
The competitive part, and because they knew by research that a competitive part doesn't work out that good for women. So they took that out, and that worked really good. And in the end, the people who were attending at that hackathon said, I think I won the best prize in a hackathon ever. What I won was friends.
Right. You all agree we might be better off with more diversity? Or do we need to keep explaining? No? Okay. For me, it generally works better to, if I want to change something, if I understand why something is the way it is now. So let's have a, what happened there? Yeah? Let's have a little bit of a look at why we are in the industry, in a place in this industry with diversity the way we are now. First of all, I'm going to show you a letter which Lego distributed with all their products in the 70s, which basically said, what's happening with my mic? Yeah? Okay. It basically said, parents, please let your kids play with Lego if they want to. It doesn't matter whether it's a boy or a girl. Let them build. Let them experiment. And they were encouraging a diversity-rich environment with a semi-technical tool, which was quite rare in the time. What Lego has done since is a different matter, but at that time they did it right. If we then look at that same period, this tweet shows some role models we had at that time. Does anyone know can anyone identify the people we mean by this? Anyone? Can someone give me a name, 2 names, 3 names, please? Alan Turing, correct? Sophie Wilson? Yes? The compiler, someone else? Grace Hopper? Funny little anecdote to the side. Alan Turing wasn't actually the first one to break the Enigma machine. That was Mary, a woman from Poland. But they then changed the algorithm in the Enigma. So those people are forgotten, largely. Most of the people now haven't heard of these people, and they are the people who lay the foundation of the industry we now work in. So what happened after the 70s? What you saw was the rise of personal computers. And personal computers, and I'm hoping this is going to work. Oh, no, it's not going to work, so I'm just going to leave it on the slide. There's a video there as well. Personal computers were largely marketed to rich white boys because they were rich. They had money, and computers were really expensive at the time. So they were marketed as boy toys because the men were earning the money, and a lot of family constellations in the 80s were the men working at home, the woman looking after the children. So they were very consciously marketed at men, at boys. And that changed how people were perceiving computers. And then we look at role models. If we look at role models, everyone knows what Indiana Jones has done for archaeology. Suddenly, the schools couldn't fit enough people in the room who wanted to study archaeology. Everyone knows what CSI has done for forensic science. Where are the role models in the media for IT? The ones we have are generally still comic relief. They're not people to be taken seriously, not people to aim to be. They're no heroes. Maybe we can manipulate the media a little bit to start showing us some IT heroes. Because we are heroes, aren't we? Aren't we? What about real life role models? How many of you recognize all 6 of the people on this slide? Anyone more than 3? These are top people in our industry today. With different diversity backgrounds. If for any of these you're wondering what their diversity background is, come and find us after the talk, we'll explain. But we've put them up there for a reason. And one of the things we find is they still won't speak out about diversity. They won't step up and be the role model they really are. Because quite often when they step up, they'll still be told, yeah, but you only got that role because you're a woman or because you're... They're still being seen as not fully competent while they are. So they still feel ambivalent about stepping up about it either. And then we all have our personal histories we bring in. For a woman, like me, when I first got in the IT industry, I felt incredibly intimidated. Because right now, it's largely men. And I was taught as a young girl to always be careful of large groups of men. Because, for personal safety reasons. So when I first came to a conference, my initial response was like, oh dear, where can I hide? And then I still stepped forward because I know I belong. I know I've earned my place. But for a lot of women, it's intimidating. And not just women. Also people with different ethnicities. They've come across prejudice in all their lives, from the very early age. This woman, I don't know if any of you know this story, she is a very successful banker in the US. She was driving a BMW in Harlem. And the police stopped her and said, who are you and why are you driving a BMW in Harlem? And she said, well, I'm vice president at this bank. This is my car. Verify it if you like. Call the company. Look on the internet. Look on Twitter. Obama is following me. She got locked up in a psych ward for 8 days because they didn't believe her. And all of it was true. And could have been verified just by going online for 5 minutes. And not just gender either. Prejudice about religious background. Or prejudice about ability. If we take all that into account, we need more empathy. We need to realize that some people come to this industry with a little bit of a barrier, but they're still coming, so let's welcome them. And all the same, with all that what I've just mentioned, people are still entering the industry. And then they leave. And they don't leave because they find it difficult. They don't leave because they don't like what they do. They don't leave because they're not good enough. They leave because of the culture. A culture which I would still often compare to a very competitive culture, to maybe schoolyard culture, where people are comparing, like, look, my framework is best, no, mine is better, look at my IDE. It's very competitive, it's very, look at me. And not everyone feels comfortable in that culture. And we also claim that we're very welcoming and that we're open, but in reality, bullying is still accepted. And if you speak out against the bullying, it normally gets stepped up instead of lessening. We claim to be a merit culture, a culture where we only look at what people have achieved. But how do we measure merit? I know of a conference which had a big discussion about this, where they were saying, yeah, but we only look at, we research the potential speakers and we look at the blog posts they've written and other conferences they've presented at. So we really look at what they've done. And I'm saying, yeah, but for me, I only write a blog post if I'm the first worldwide to ever discover something. That's 2 in my lifetime so far. So people present themselves differently. That doesn't make them lesser programmers, doesn't make them lesser presenters, it doesn't make them lesser candidates to be your colleague. And you see that in recruitment as well. How often have you seen advertisements for coat wranglers? Or for ninjas? Or even for rock stars? Do you play guitar? There we go. Why are we looking only for the top performers? Why do we use language bias to again put the competitiveness in there? It's language bias which will only recruit for the top, but the top performers can only perform at the top of their ability with the 90% enablers there as well. And we're not recruiting those, we're ignoring those and thereby stimulating them to leave the industry. Well, we need more people in the industry. Somewhere something is going wrong here. There's a mismatch. And language bias is not just in recruiting, it's everywhere. Think, if I tell someone, oh, please make an appointment with my secretary, how many people of you now think that's a woman? Automatically. What about simple sayings, man up? Have you got the balls to do something? There's so much language bias in everyday language, we're not even aware of it. And we all use it, I do as well. But being a little bit more aware of the language we use will make things easier. I even noticed something on the website of Code Motion. I won't point it out, but if you like, have a look yourself. Again, where language bias was used, he, presuming that there would not be a woman available or willing to step up and play the role which they were referring to. Language bias. So let's look at how we treat each other. Generally, what I find is there's a place for competitiveness, but that's outside on the marketplace. That's not inside your team, that's not inside your company. That's where you want to cooperate with each other, and you'll be exponentially better if you do. Make sense? Okay, let's have a look then at what we can do today. We don't have the solution, but we have little bits and pieces collected, ideas gathered from lots of different people. We've got a survey online, please fill it in as well, because again, we're still collecting more ideas. Lots of little ideas of how we can each contribute in our daily lives to change this. It's not a do this and it will change, but if every one of us changes one or two things, it will improve. First of all, let's look at governments. Generally, governments follow. They don't lead. They will follow what the masses tell them to do. Some examples?
Well, we've looked around, and if you look at Denmark, for example, they have the best laws right now for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender women and men. And I think we can learn from that. And when you're a rape victim in Belgium, it's always the victor that gets addressed to that and never the victim itself. These small things, I think these can be an inspiration for our things. If you're looking at the Netherlands, where I live, we have dedicated breast pump rooms. That's mandatory. I think it should be in every country. It's these small things that add up.
And then we all have our employers. How many of you work for a company? How many are self-employed? Who works for an employer? About 90%. Well, generally it's been found, research again, that setting a quota is not a good idea. Setting a target, however, something to strive towards, is a good idea and does work. And I'm not saying quotas or targets are a good thing, but they might be something we need just to get over that barrier where we are at. Nothing is changing. So if we just push through that, it will make a difference. Another thing we need to address is the wage gap. It's still the fact that women in general make 20 to 30% less than their male counterparts for the same job. Not because they're not doing as well, they're just not getting the same money. If you have a colleague where you suspect this might be happening, ask them. Ask them, what are you earning? You're doing the same job. Maybe we should talk to management about this. Be an ally. Similarly, I still see companies which send out invites. We've got a company, please come to us and bring your wife. Excuse me? Not everyone is married, not everyone is male, and not everyone has a wife. So maybe you should ask, bring your partner. Or even better, +1. Problem solved. Make people feel welcome, whatever family constellation they have. And if we talk about family, what about things like pregnancies? It's still a fact that women generally don't get hired for career jobs in their fertile years. At the same time, what about fathers who would want some parental leave as well? What about a startup where everyone is young and then suddenly someone gets pregnant and there's no regulations or nothing on paper on how to deal with it? They might not come back after their pregnancy. Maybe we should start thinking about those situations before they happen. Another thing is your work environment. This sign is an example. What about ramps so that someone with a disability can more easily enter your facility? What about prayer rooms? Some people might feel more comfortable being able to do their praying on religious days in the company. They will feel more welcome in your company if you do things like that. And I'm not saying do everything, but look around you and make some suggestions which make sense for your environment.
So, if we're talking about jobs, we recently talked about recruitment. And I think that's still a big issue because all the recruitment advertisements I see are, hey, we're looking for a strong person who's willing to battle with us on these code things. And I don't feel like I'm a warrior, okay? I don't have a spear when I go to the office. So that's not how it should be. And the things we learned in school as well. I mean, the language bias in handicapped, it's a thing. It should be impaired, I think, right now. So when you're putting off documents on your website for your office, make sure they're checked, make sure they're good. And it's these small things that we recently saw it in the Spotify hackathon as well. They can make the change.
Let someone proofread.
So we want, I think, remote work, and we want part-time jobs, and we want some days off every now and then. That's not standard. So I think we should go for that and make that the discuss point as well. Because not everybody is welcome with a 40-hour job and then some over hours and some extra over hours and some extra over hours.
And then we're at conferences. You're here. Congratulations. Applaud yourself, please. Conferences make a difference in the fact that you get to meet different people from different companies, so you start mixing with other people already. But one thing every conference needs is a code of conduct, and I've had quite some discussions with conferences about this. Some conferences say, yeah, but the laws in my country are actually stricter than any code of conduct we could put down. And I still say you should have a code of conduct, because does the fact that your laws are stricter mean that you don't want anyone from outside your country to attend your conference? You can't expect everyone in the whole wide world to know the laws of your country. So a code of conduct is just a way to make sure that everyone knows how we want to treat each other. And with a code of conduct, it can easily become window dressing. We don't want that. Window dressing is where you just do it to look good. So always make sure there's someone, a dedicated person people can go to report violations and who will take action. At the same time, we're all human. We meet new people, we make friends, we might fall in love. The code of conduct shouldn't inhibit that either. It shouldn't be so strict that normal human contact isn't possible anymore. So always try and find a balance in that. The whole thing about this, again, is empathy. And if you're unsure, ask. We might have a great conversation later on, and I might say, I might feel like giving you a hug at the end. And yeah, well, I'm not sure whether you'd be comfortable with that. So maybe if I'm not sure, I should just ask you, are you okay if I give you a hug? Are you? Problem solved. And I know not everyone's comfortable with asking those things. There's different cultures which try not to offend people by preventing them from having to say no. But try and find a way to ask something anyway, because communication is key.
So,
we're both.
So, I don't know about you, but when I go to a conference, it's all these meeting new people and having fun, and it's all really good. And then at the end of the day, I check in and I'm really tired. So having a way to decompress a little during the conference, have a room where I can just sit back a little bit and relax and take some time for myself, that would be awesome. And also, if you give out shirts as a conference, make sure there's female fit shirts, and make sure there's extra large shirts or slim fit shirts for me. it's cheaper than ever to print shirts. So making people feel more welcome by giving them the shirt that they feel welcome with and that they would love to wear after the conference, I think that's a good start. And the most easy part for me for a conference is when I come at a conference and I find this big sign which says in lots of languages, welcome. Because that's really cheap. But when it says welcome, like in Dutch, it's like, oh, I can belong here. This can be my place. Cheap solution, good option.
How many of you go to meetups? How many of you go to other sort of IT-related communities? Are part of that? That's over 50%. We're all part of communities. And communities can make a difference because that's where we meet new people and pull in new people in the industry.
So, I'm a big lover of beer and pizza, okay? When they told me, hey, you can come to Rome to speak for a conference, I was like, that's the country of pizza. Awesome. But as a friend of me recently stated, I go to meetups 3 times a week, and 3 times a week having pizza, not that good. And 3 times a week having beer, not that good for my productivity. So try something out, because most of the time when you have a meetup, the food is paid by the sponsor. So it's nothing more than giving another number to the sponsor, say, hey, call this number instead of the regular one for food. And then you have salads, and salads are awesome as well. And when we look at it, these are all logos of advocacy groups. They are really, really cool because they step up. They are the groups that step up for a minority and say, hey, let's make a change in the IT industry. And I'm really dreaming of a day that that all of these should be history. But right now we need them, and they need your support as well. Lots of them have mentoring programs, and mentoring is, I think, the best way to learn good code. Because we tried that out with Code the Dojo, and South Africa PHP has a Next Gen conference next to the regular conference. Kids are the future, and if we can learn kids or other people to teach to code well, that's the part when I really understand my code, because most of the time I have this function and it does suddenly, and yeah, actually I have no idea what it does. I copied it somewhere from Stack Overflow and it does it every time I want to, but I have no idea what it does. And when somebody asks me and says, what does this function do? And I come with the excuse, I copy pasted that from Stack Overflow and it was awesome and it works always. That's not a good answer. Who of you are parents? Teach your kids how to code and make them feel that they're the best kids in the world, okay?
To add to that, also remember that a lot of the time schools will say things like, oh, but yeah, no, you probably don't want to go there in the technical field because for whatever reason they think of. Any child shows interest in a particular field, always be encouraging. And we're running out of time, so we're going to quickly go through the last few points. I think this is just a beautiful quote. Look it up on the slide later. It's basically just try and inspire the new generation because we need them. And then we're back to you. You're here at the conference today. What about if every one of you would go out and try and meet 1 or 2 people? And if you then introduce those 2 people to 1 or 2 more and let them introduce you to 2 more. At the end of the conference, you'll have made 10, maybe 15 new friends. It's easy to make people feel welcome, introduce people to each other. They'll get to know people, and the next time they come to a conference, they think, hang on, but I know some people. I already feel more in place.
And one of the things I want to address as well is step up for others. I mean, it's really easy if you're part of a group to say, hey, come and play with us. And you know, all of you know how shitty it is when you're outside that group that you want to attend to, but you're not into that group. And you all know the feeling when somebody says to you, hey, come on, let's have fun together. So step up for other people. The thing is, I'm not really shy, but the thing with big groups of people, complicated. But I'm not antisocial, so you can talk to me, and you can talk to me afterwards, and you can talk to other people who look shy as well, and that works out.
So basically, our message is, we don't have the solution either, but together we can come up with the solution with all of you. So please keep the discussion going. Think about your own environment. Think what you can contribute to making a difference, and together we can change this industry. Thank you for being here. Any questions? We'll be around for the rest of the day, or most of the rest of the day, so if you want, come and find us. Yeah? Thank you.